walks down the street, he says, why am I soft in the middle now? Why am I soft in the middle? The rest of my life is so hard. I need a photo opportunity. I want a shot at redemption. Don't want to end up a cartoon in a cartoon graveyard. Bone digger, dogs in the moonlight. Far away, my well-lit door. Mr. Beer Melly, get these mutts away from me, you know. I don't find this stuff amusing anymore. If you'll be my bodyguard, I can be your long-lost pal. I can call you Betty, and Betty, when you call me, you can call me out. A man walks down the street, he says, why am I short of attention? Got a short little span of attention, and oh, my nights are so long. Where's my wife and family? What if I die here? Who'll be my role model now that my role model is gone? He ducked back down the alley with some roly-poly little bat-faced girl. All along, there were incidents and accidents. There were hints and allegations. If you'll be my bodyguard, I can be your long-lost pal. I can call you Betty, and Betty, when you call me, you can call me out, call me out. Speak language, he holds no currency. He is a foreign man. He is surrounded by the sound. Cattle in the marketplace, scatterlings and orphanages. He looks around, he sees angels in the architecture, spinning in infinity. He says, amen, hallelujah. If you'll be my bodyguard, I can be your long-lost pal. I can call you Betty, and Betty, when you call me, you can call me out, call me na 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 na
Check 1 2 testing 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 testing 1 2 3. Check 1 2. That's fine for me. Check 1 2 3 testing 1 2 3.
I know a place. Ain't nobody crying. Ain't nobody worried. No. Ain't no smiling faces. No. Lying to the races.
Pittsburgh! Pittsburgh! Thank you everyone for joining us on this cold fall day here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are the Funky Fly Project. Very thankful to be here in support of our next president, Mr. Joe Biden, and our next vice president, Kamala Harris. Y'all agree? Y'all fired up? Honk your horns, clap loud! Yes, sir! We're gonna get things rolling, we're gonna get things started. First song's a Funky Fly original called Deja Vu. Thank you so much. I'm gonna introduce the band to y'all right here. On keys, Mr. Henry Schultz. Give him a couple honks. On the bass, Mr. Eric Didell Jr. Keep honking. On the drums, Mr. Brandon Terry. Give him a honk too. My name is Winston Bell on saxophone. This next song is a Funky Fly original called Sunday Afternoon. Hey, real quick. Honk if you're excited to see Senator Bernie Sanders. Because I know I am. All right. This is our final song from the Funky Flower Project. We're going to let the amazing man come up on stage and talk to y'all. This one's going to be featuring our bass player, Mr. Eric Dardo Jr. It is a song he wrote. It's called Planet E. Yo, E, you got it. Mr. Eric Dardo Jr. on bass. Y'all honk y'all horn. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is time. It is time to let him loose. It is time to give the drummer some, y'all. Yo, Brandon. Hey, yo, Brandon. Take me to church, boy. Ladies and gentlemen, honk your horns for yourself. Give yourself a hand for coming out, voting blue. Make sure y'all vote early. If you're not going to do that, make sure you vote on November 3rd. Once again, vote blue. Mr. Henry Schultz on keys, Eric Dotto Jr. on bass, Brandon Terry on drums. My name is Winston Bell on saxophone. We are the Funky Flower Project Pittsburgh. Thank y'all so much for having us. We're gonna go home now. Project. That's our next president right there. Can't wait to have it happen. Make sure y'all vote!
wanting. Ain't no psychiatrist, ain't no doctor with degrees, but it don't take too much time to see what you're doing to me. You better think about what you're trying to do to me. Yeah, think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. Oh, freedom, 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 oh, freedom, yeah, freedom, now freedom, freedom, freedom.
Watch this, y'all. Cindy, Mama, you understand that?
No.
Well, like, I don't understand how you can, because, like, I've been to, Paris, Beirut, I've been Iraq, Iran, Eurasia, I speak very, very fluent Spanish. Todo está bien chévere. You understand that?
Bien
Chévere?
Bien.
Chévere. Is that right, Mama? Yeah, because I got my shaking room, I'm going to do a little thing. Everybody's got a thing, but some don't know how to handle it. Always reaching out in vain, just taking the things not worth having. But don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing, Mama. 'Cause I'll be standing on the side when you check it out. You say your style of life's a drag and that you must go other places. But just don't you feel too bad when you get fooled by smiling faces. But don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing, Mama. 'Cause I'll be standing on the side when you check it out. When you get off your trip, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing, Mama.
Hello, Pittsburgh. Please give a warm welcome to Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman.
Welcome to the Carey Furnace. I first want to thank Ron and Augie with Rivers of Steel for being gracious enough to host us today. Can we give them a big honk? Yeah. What an extraordinary place with an extraordinary history. The mill has been fallow for, was it 1984, Augie? 1986. But here we are today, getting ready for the most consequential election of our lives. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out today. Can we get a warm Pittsburgh welcome that they hear all the way over in Regent Square for Senator Bernie Sanders? Yeah, Bernie's in the house. Bernie's in the house. So, any rate, thanks for coming out. It gives you my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our first speaker. And it's my friend and my colleague in Harrisburg, State Representative Sara Innamorato. Come on out, Sara. Big honks for Sara, big honks.
Hello! My name is
Sara Innamorato. I'm the state representative in the 21st District. I am proud to represent the people of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, including workers at the Carnegie Museums and the University of Pittsburgh that are fighting to form a union. As a member of the People's House, it's my responsibility to have a hand on the pulse of what's going on in our community. It's my job to be closest to the pain. And I can tell you this pandemic has been devastating to my neighbors. And like you, I know that devastation and despair were plaguing our neighborhoods long before we ever heard the words COVID-19. For me, that meant struggling to pay back my student loan debt. It meant living without health care. It was about working as a nonprofit professional and seeing the demand for services far outweigh our capacity. It was watching my family have to work multiple hourly wage jobs just to survive. It was burying my father after he died from an opioid addiction. Too many of us have these stories, and they share this pain. And it has been here long before President Trump was ever elected. That's why our cry has been, not me, us. There is solidarity in our suffering. And now there are millions of us across this nation in elected office, in labor unions, in community groups, on the protest lines, and in workplaces who are working to build a more just, humane, and free society for ourselves, our families, and for people we don't know. A world where healthcare, housing, education, clean air, and clean water are rights rather than privileges. Where hard work receives the compensation it deserves. Where Black, brown, and Indigenous lives matter. Where the misery of the many is not seen as an acceptable price to pay for the comfort and the decadence of the few. The future we want is within our reach. But if the past 4 years have taught us anything, that the road is not short and it is not easy. And in order to build our multiracial working class movement, we first have to confront the forces of repression and violence that are threatening our values and our democracy. We are in the closing weeks of a presidential election. And while we know there are people out there, they're probably our friends and our family, who think that neither candidate is our champion, it is clear that one is our enemy. The re-election of Donald Trump would be an existential threat to our movement for justice, because we cannot win democracy in the workplace if we lose it in our civic life. We cannot recover from historic traumas when new ones are inflicted on us every single day. We can't guarantee health care and housing to all as a pandemic rages on and millions face eviction. We cannot confront the threat of climate change when our leaders deny its very existence. And I'll be honest with y'all, electing Joe Biden, it will not cure what ails America. No one leader can do that. But it will stem the rising tide of authoritarianism and hate in our country. This is about using our collective power to manifest the change that we demand to see in our society. We have so much work to do. And right now, this journey, it starts at the ballot box, and this year in Pennsylvania at the mailbox, electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and all the candidates up and down the ballot who are gonna fight for a people-centered recovery. And that's how we're gonna build a government that's truly reflective of the people and for the people. History doesn't bend towards justice on its own. It has to be organized for, fought for, died for. Our path forward is perilous, but it is also crystal clear. Unite to defeat Trump and his movement of racism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia, oligarchy. And then continue to fight against the unjust status quo that gave us Donald Trump to begin with. Now I ask all of you, are you ready to fight for someone you do not know? Are you ready to unite to defeat Donald Trump? Are you going to fight to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? This is ours to win. Solidarity.
While we're waiting, by a show of horns, who's voted so far? Who's voted? Who has their mail-in ballot but hasn't used it yet? Show of horns. Get it in the mail today. Get it in the mail tomorrow. Drop it off. We got to get it in. If any of you out there are sitting on a mail-in ballot, get it in the mail, get it in a drop box today or tomorrow. Do not let this weekend pass without that. The Republican Party in Pennsylvania has already reappealed to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court about the deadline for counting ballots in Pennsylvania. If that's successful, that totally upends the amount of time it is to get your ballots in. We can't give that a chance because the Supreme Court was 4-4 on that judgment. And guess what? They're getting a new justice on Monday. And it's no accident that a week after that judgment came down, they're reappealing it because they know how it's going to go. If you've got a mail-in ballot, get it in the mail or in a ballot box today or tomorrow. Thank you. So the next speaker is one that I'm really honored to introduce. She's actually my state representative. I think Summer and I have a competition on who had to travel the least amount of distance to get here today. We're both under a mile here. And without any further ado, I'll let the star up here. State Representative Summer Lee, come on up. Big horns.
I don't suggest doing this often, but I know because we Democrats have been taking this pandemic very seriously that I know that my colleague, the Lieutenant Governor, has taken this seriously, so I will use his mic. But welcome to my district. It is such an honor to have you here in Rankin, right here in our Cary Furnace, where we are sitting on the site of so much history. Long before I was a state rep, long before I was into politics or really understood my role in politics, I was a young, poor black girl who grew up right here in Rankin. I've come a long way from that time. We have come a long way from our humble beginnings way back when our valley was still the Still Valley. And we've seen so much since then. This is probably one of the first times where I wasn't quite sure what I would say. Because what do you say to folks who are disaffected, who are disenfranchised, folks who are disappointed, folks who are scared, folks who don't know what our future can hold if we keep the course that we're in right now? I tell you that we have a duty to fight for our freedom. That's our tradition. Our tradition is that whether you are disappointed, whether you have the best person on your ballot, to know that you are on that ballot. I'm here today because I am going to fight and vote for you. I am here to fight and vote for each and every one of us, whether you live in the Mon Valley or you live in the Allegheny Valley, whether you're in Pittsburgh or Allegheny County or Philadelphia or anywhere in the country. It is our duty to show up this day, to show up for the next 10 days, to show up until November 3rd, so that we ensure that we are defeating Trumpism. That's what's at stake for us. That's what's at stake for us. If you grew up in this area, then you know what it's like to be a worker, a union worker who is unsure if your job will be there at the end of this pandemic. If you lived in this area, you know what it's like to be unsure how you're going to pay the bills as we are dealing with the economic downturn of a pandemic that has been handled so negligently that the rest of the world looks at us. The rest of the world looks at us and says, is that the United States that we heard and learned about? This is a fight we're fighting for. Every one of us are worth fighting for. And believe it or not, even though we have a president who says that he is the best for black and brown and marginalized people since Abraham Lincoln, believe what your eyes and your ears tell you. We've seen enough. We have seen enough. So I hope that wherever you were in our primary, whether you were like me and you were with our Senator Bernie Sanders, or you were others who were with Elizabeth Warren, or you were someone else who was with Biden from the beginning, I hope that you will join us all in fighting for all of us and ensuring that we have worker protection as we move forward, because that's on the ballot. I hope that you will vote today and tomorrow until November 3rd to ensure that our teachers are protected and our students are protected as we're trying to find a way to get our kids back in school. That's on our ballot. I hope that you will show up and you will vote and fight to protect every black and brown and queer and marginalized and disabled person, because they are on your ballot, and our health care is on our ballot. A living wage is on our ballot. Gender equity is on our ballot. Our environment is on our ballot. Climate change is on our ballot. And I'm here to tell you that whether or not you agree with who's on the ticket, you're on the ballot. We are on that ballot. So when I was trying to figure out what I would say to people, the people who I represent, the disenfranchised, the disaffected, I represent folks who have been trying for so long to find themselves in this system. I'm here to tell you that we are everywhere in this system. And that is our duty, to help our sister and brother find themselves if they are lost in it right now. And what we hope is that on November 3rd, that we're not facing just an end, but we're facing a beginning. We are facing a beginning on November 3rd, because on November 3rd is the day that we begin to rebuild this society in the image that we have for it, that we begin to build a society that fits every single one of us, because we all know here, everybody here speaking tonight, Senator Sanders, Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, we all know that a better world is possible, and we are going to do everything in our power to fight for it. And voting today, tomorrow, until November 3rd is the first thing that we can do. It's one thing we can do, but it's not the last. So thank you so much for coming out here today. If you're here, we need you to get fired up. We need you to get fired up for each other. Get fired up for the person in the car with you. Get fired up for the person in my valley, the Mon Valley with us. Get fired up so that we can start to change this nation and make it what we deserve it to be. I'll see you at the polls.
I see SEIU in the house. Where is SEIU? Nice. Union Way of Life. What other unions are out there? That nice. A lot of our news guilds are under siege too. How many of them are here today? It gives me my great pleasure to introduce another member from the union family. United Electricals. Brian Petacek, come on up. Who came all the way from Erie, Pennsylvania to share his story of solidarity.
I like that UE flag out there. Hooey! UE! Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Pietchek. I'm a proud local 506er out of Erie, Pennsylvania. Erie. I'm also an elected alternate delegate that was pledged to Bernie Sanders, who is going to be here in the House, right? Give it up. I also represented organized labor as a white male in the 16th Congressional District up in Erie. What I'd like to talk to you guys about is the war that Trump has put on unions. Throughout the pandemic, union workers have been on the front lines because we're the last line of defense from preventing the economy from grinding to a halt. Despite our contributions to the economy, President Trump has failed working families by refusing to implement a plan to contain the virus, reopen our communities that protects our health and livelihoods. To put it bluntly, no union member should be voting for Trump, period. But the truth is, over many decades now, the Republican Party has worked to undercut unions, organizing and collective bargaining as well. These attacks have increased under President Trump, who has no problem with our families struggling day in and day out. So as long as his friends and cronies on Wall Street see the numbers in their bank accounts go up, and that's BS. As a result, we've seen inequality rise, and no matter how hard we work, it's increasingly difficult to keep up. The threat that 4 more years of President Trump poses to unions and working communities cannot be understated. Now more than ever, we need leaders that will not only support unions and working families, but fight for working families and create policies to encourage and incentivize unionization, collective bargaining, leaders like Joe Biden. Joe Biden also understands that we need to build an economy that works for everyone and not just the powerful corporations and the ultra elites. That means working to build a strong, inclusive middle class, and Joe knows that the only way to ensure a strong middle class is through unions. I'll say that all day. Joe won't just return things back to the way that they were before the pandemic. He will put unions at the center of his effort to build back better. Joe's plan will create millions of good-paying union jobs in manufacturing and technology that this country needs. As president, Joe will fight back against corporations that exploit workers and hold them accountable for labor violations. He will ensure that workers are given the pay as well as the dignity that they deserve from a hard day's work. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here today with Senator Bernie Sanders, a working class hero and one of my personal heroes. Give it up for Bernie Sanders. A man who, like Joe Biden, has spent his career fighting for working families. Senator Sanders is a champion for union workers and working families across the country, and a leader who has had the back of UE workers in Erie time and time again. Senator Sanders stood in solidarity back in 2019 when my company, Wabtec, threw all the workers out because they wanted to rip an 82-year-old pre-existing contract that we had with General Electric. Bernie had our back, and he stood the picket line with us and said, I am with you. You sure as hell didn't hear that from Donald Trump. I'm glad to be here today again in this fight for the long haul with Senator Sanders, with the UE Local 506, and the union members across the Commonwealth as we work to put Joe Biden, a champion for working families, into the White House. Thank you.
While we prep, I got a question. In 2016, out in the field, I heard a lot of people, more than I should have, that said, they were both the same. I'm not going to vote, or my candidate isn't the one on the ballot. Is there any question left? Is there a difference between the two candidates at this point? Who's going to sit this out? Do you know anybody that wants to sit this one out? Because if you do, you got to reach them, and you got to tell them it's the most consequential election of our lives. Too many people sat it out last time in 2016, and it slipped away by fewer than 45,000 votes. I can't tell you how important it is. Every vote counts. I'm going to introduce our last speaker before the senator joins us. It's my distinct honor to introduce Stephanie Fellow of the United Food and Commercial Workers right here at Giant Eagle. Bye-bye.
If we just let it be, oh no, the world won't get no better. We gotta change again. Just you and
Okay, can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a Giant Eagle worker. I've been there 9 years now. I work in the prepared foods department, frying chicken, making rotisserie chicken, making sandwiches and salads, selling beer and wine, making meals. After graduating from Carlow University about 15 years ago, I went to work in a domestic violence center, where among other responsibilities, I worked on-call advocacy. The importance of the work we were doing cannot be understated, but I was only hired as a part-time worker, meaning that I didn't have health care. When my job finally offered me health care, it was contingent upon my coworker accepting it as well. She had just gone through all the hoops to be declared domestic partner and get her boyfriend's health care, so she did not need it. Therefore, I did not get health care. Shortly thereafter, I lost my job unexpectedly. About a year later, I started working at Giant Eagle. My starting salary was $7.35, and the minimum wage was, and still is, $7.25. As a part-time employee, I wouldn't see health care until my second year. To put it simply, you cannot survive on a job like that. We can't survive on $7.25. Now, 9 years later, I'm the mother of a 2-year-old son, and I've got $26,000 in student loan debt. Luckily for me, when I've been in a pinch, I've been able to rely on my family and my boyfriend. After my grandmother passed, I was able to move into her house rent-free. Let me tell you, my life would not be possible without these things: family members, friends, medical assistance. This is America. We deserve a living wage. We deserve health care. We deserve to be able to pay our bills. I cannot look at you all today and tell you how I would have survived without this external support. And the sad truth is, most people in my position do not have that kind of support.
Early on in my time at Giant Eagle, I decided to get involved with my union so that I could secure basic rights and a decent salary, if not for myself, for the generation that comes after me. By bargaining, we were able to secure health care after 1 year for part-time workers. We were able to secure a 4th week of paid vacation after 12 years with the company. We were able to secure pay raises from that $7.35 to now $11 an hour starting rate. After this effort, I began to look for other ways to get involved in the effort to secure basic rights and dignity for workers. We marched on the boss at the Southside Giant Eagle for full-time positions in our department. We marched on the boss, and they filed charges on our union. So our union marched on the store with drums and people. We took an arrest with the Fight for 15. We took an arrest with the Fight for 15 so that nobody has to start at $7.25 an hour. I began organizing Walmart workers, and in the process, I learned about people who shared my story, women who were forced to quit after becoming pregnant because they have no light duty at Walmart. That's a shame. I got involved with my union because future generations shouldn't have to go through the struggles that working people are facing today. People who are working to protect their communities deserve to have access to quality, affordable health care. People should not lose their jobs when they have a child. And people working at a grocery store, feeding families during a pandemic, should be paid a wage that allows them to put food on their own table. Joe Biden will fight for a $15 minimum wage. He will provide paid sick days and paid and family leave so that Pennsylvanians can care for themselves and their loved ones without worrying about losing their jobs. He has also laid out an extensive plan to ensure that people like me don't stay awake at night wondering how we're going to pay off our student loans. And he will ensure that everybody has access to quality, affordable health care. There is no one better to speak to Joe's plan for working families in Western Pennsylvania better than Bernie Sanders, his former colleague, and a leader who has dedicated his life to fighting for workers and families and unions. Senator Sanders is here today for the same reason that we are. He knows Joe Biden will be the president that working families deserve. And he, like me and Joe Biden, believe that we have an obligation to fight for the next generation of working families. I am pleased to introduce Senator Bernie Sanders. To the people.
Pennsylvania. What a beautiful parking lot. Your cars look great, and so do you. 4 years ago, Trump won the state by 44,000 votes. We're not going to make that mistake again. We're going to win here in Pennsylvania. We're going to win in Michigan. We're going to win in Wisconsin. And we are going to get rid of the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And we're going to elect Joe and Kamala. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for being here and for the great work that he has done. And I want to thank Lee and Sara Innamorato and Brian Petrick and Stephanie Fellow for their great work as trade unionists. And one of the goals that Joe Biden and I have is that we know that workers do well and the middle class does well when we grow the trade union movement in America. There are millions of workers who want to join unions today, but are unable to do so because of illegal corporate activity. We're going to put an end to that. Now, you have heard it before, and I'm going to say it again. This is the most important election, not only in our lifetimes, but in the modern history of our country. Simply stated, this country, and in fact the world, cannot tolerate 4 more years of Donald Trump. And not only do we have to elect Joe as our next president, we need to get rid of Mitch McConnell. And we need a Democratic Senate that will pass immediately an opiate crisis legislation that will protect the working families of this country. It is an outrage beyond belief that McConnell and his friends are refusing to vote an extra nickel for workers who are struggling to put food on the table, to avoid eviction, to pay for health care. And here is my promise to you, if I have anything to say about it, and I will. First order of business for a Democratic Senate is a major opioid stimulus package to protect working people. And let me say to all Pennsylvanians, not just progressives, but moderates and conservatives, I hope you all believe and understand that America cannot be a model for the world if we continue to have a president who is a pathological liar. You know, in a democracy, people disagree with each other. We'll have disagreements. But you cannot have stability in government if you have a president that has lied some 20,000 times since he is president. And we do not need a president who does not believe in our Constitution, who does not believe in the rule of law, and in fact is trying desperately to undermine American democracy. We don't need a president who is trying to suppress the vote. A president who is questioning the very legitimacy of the election in which he is competing and has refused to say that he will leave office after he loses. So to all of those who have put their lives on the line to defend American democracy, I say that we cannot sustain another 4 years of Donald Trump. And we do not need a president who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a homophobe, who is a xenophobe, and who is a religious bigot. We do not need a president who every single day, for cheap political reasons, is trying to divide us up. We need a president, and that president will be Joe Biden, who is bringing us together, not dividing us up. And so at this moment, this pivotal moment in American history, we have got to come together as blacks and whites and Latinos, Native Americans, Asian Americans, gay and straight, those of us born in America, those of us who emigrated to America. We have got together, come together as one people to show our strength and to evict Donald Trump from the White House. And most certainly, we cannot continue to have a president who rejects science. Not now. Not as we face the worst pandemic in 100 years, which has already taken the lives of some 220,000 Americans. Just the other day, as you'll recall, Donald Trump told us in the debate with Joe, he told us, and I quote, "We're rounding the corner on this pandemic. The things are getting better." And just yesterday, it was reported that we have reached the highest level of recorded COVID-19 cases in a single day. Over 80,000 people, new cases, and over 2,200 here in Pennsylvania. But it's not just that Trump lies about the severity of the pandemic. What is even worse is that his anti-science attitude is directly responsible for the United States having the highest per capita death rate from COVID of any major country on earth. The truth is, sad truth is, tens of thousands of Americans have died who should not have died if Trump and the administration were prepared to deal with this pandemic. From day one, as you'll all recall, Trump downplayed the seriousness of this horrific disease. You'll all remember him saying, "Don't worry about it, it's gonna go away." Well, Mr. Trump, it hasn't gone away. It has gotten worse. And you can't effectively combat this pandemic by ignoring what the scientists and the doctors are saying. You can't combat this pandemic by calling Dr. Fauci, who is a dedicated public servant, an idiot. You don't combat this pandemic by making fun of people who wear masks. You don't combat this pandemic by continuing to hold rallies where there is no social distancing and where people do not wear face masks. That is not the model, that's not the example we want to be showing to the American people. In fact, think about it. How absurd is it that the White House itself has become a super spreader of this virus? With many of the people working there, including the president, coming down with COVID. You don't combat this pandemic when 6 months after the start of this horrific situation, 6 months later, we have doctors and nurses and people working in critical jobs who still do not have the personal protective equipment that they need. This is a country that put a man on the moon. This is a country that develops sophisticated guided missiles. You would think, you might think, that we'd be able to produce the masks that our doctors need. And now I just want to take a moment and ask you some questions of enormous consequences. And I want you to think for a bit about your answers. Which candidate for president has shown that he will be disciplined, that he will be responsible, that he will do his best to protect the people around him as we deal with this pandemic? And the answer is, well, the answer is Joe Biden. And which candidate for president has made it clear that he will develop policies which are based on science, not right-wing politics, and that he will seek the advice of the best scientists and the best doctors in our country and around the world to combat and defeat this pandemic? And the answer is, it is Joe Biden. Which candidate for president will develop strong national protocols and guidelines and model the behaviors we all need to engage in to keep our families, our coworkers, and our neighbors safe? And the answer is Joe Biden. Now, here is a really hard one. You ready for a hard question? Which candidate has the temperament? Which candidate has the temperament to see us through this unprecedented moment, which is, in fact, the worst public health crisis in 100 years? Which candidate has the temperament? And I think the answer to that one is not very difficult. In the White House today, you have somebody who lies, somebody who is irresponsible, somebody who has turned his back on science. And the answer as to who has the temperament is quite clear. And that answer is Joe Biden. But brothers and sisters, as all of you know, and as you have heard already this afternoon from the speakers who have gone before me, the crisis that we're facing today is not just the pandemic, as serious as that is. It is also a major economic crisis, the most severe economic downturn that we have seen since the Great Depression. And let me be very, very blunt. The working class of our country today is in more desperation right now than at any time since the 1930s. As we speak, tens of millions of our fellow countrymen have lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic. They have lost their incomes. They have lost their health insurance. They have depleted their life savings. They cannot afford to pay their rent or pay their mortgages. They cannot, by the millions, afford to put food on the table for their children. And my Republican friends in Congress can spin it any way they want. But the truth is that that is the reality facing America today. Today, the percentage of Americans who do not have jobs is at its highest level in 45 years, while, as you have heard, tens of millions of Americans who do have jobs are working at starvation wages. And as bad as the economy has been in general, it has been far, far worse for our African American and Latino brothers and sisters. Unbelievably, during this pandemic, nearly 60% of Latino families and 55% of African American families have either experienced a job loss or a pay cut. Meanwhile, and we don't talk about this all that often, not everyone in America is hurting today. While the middle class is being devastated and poverty is growing, we are witnessing a massive increase in income and wealth inequality. And I want you to hear this, because you're not going to hear it too much on the TV. But over the past 7 months, 644 billionaires, not a lot of people, 644 billionaires have seen their wealth go up by $931 billion. So here we are in the midst of a major economic crisis. 30 million Americans have lost their jobs. 12 million Americans have lost their health insurance. 29 million Americans do not have enough food to eat. 40 million Americans face eviction, and yet 644 billionaires have seen an increase in their wealth by $937 billion. We need an economy that works for all of us, not just the few. And one of the issues that we have got to have the courage to tackle is this obscene level of income and wealth inequality in America. Together, we are going to end the greed of the billionaire class. When we got 500,000 people who are homeless today, when we got 90 million people who are uninsured or underinsured, we are going to tell the billionaire class they cannot have it all. This country belongs to all of us and not just the few. And what Joe Biden and I believe is that we must create an economy and a government that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And I want to say a few words because I think during this campaign there has not been enough discussion about what Joe and Kamala are actually proposing in terms of addressing the economic crises facing this country. And I want to say a few words on that because it is enormously important. Number one, Joe understands that a $7.25 an hour minimum wage is a starvation wage. And Joe understands, as I do, that we have got to raise the national federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. In the richest country on earth, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. And when we raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour, 40 million Americans will get a well-deserved pay raise. And Joe and I understand something else, is that it is absurd and grossly unfair that women in America continue to earn 70, 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. It is not a radical idea by any means to say that in this country we need equal pay for equal work. And Joe understands, as I mentioned earlier, that if we're going to grow the middle class in this country, we have got to grow the trade union movement in America. And the truth is, all over this country, there are workers who want to join unions, but they're unable to do so because of often illegal activities on the part of their employers. Their employers will fire workers who engaged in union organizing, who are standing up for workers' rights. And Joe and I are going to change that law. If workers want to join a union, and if 50% of the workers in a shop plus one sign a card, you know what? They got a union. And Joe and I understand that we have got to stop providing corporate welfare for companies who are throwing American workers out on the street. You cannot have a situation where corporations shut down plants here in America, they move to low-wage countries abroad, and the next day they're online for a federal handout. Ain't gonna happen. If corporations want federal assistance, they're going to have to treat their workers with respect and dignity. And there is something else that Joe Biden understands, that in the midst of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, we have got to create millions of good-paying union jobs. Brothers and sisters, sometimes we forget about it. Sometimes we forget about it. We're the richest country in the history of the world. How in God's name do we continue to have our roads and our bridges and our tunnels deteriorating? How do we have millions of people all across this country, not just in Flint, Michigan, who cannot drink the water that comes out of their taps? How do we have a transportation system, a rail system, far behind countries throughout the world? How do we have a major affordable housing crisis where 19 million American families unbelievably are spending half of their incomes trying to put a roof over their heads? We can put millions of workers back to work rebuilding America, and that's what we've got to do. And Joe Biden and you and I understand something else, that it is incredibly embarrassing, it is humiliating that the United States of America today, this great country, is the only major country on earth not to guarantee paid medical and family leave. I don't know how many of you know this. We don't talk about it too often. You go to Scandinavia, a woman has a baby. Depending on the country, she may get 7-8 months off full paid leave. And the father will get time off as well. And yet in this country, beyond belief, a woman today, working class woman, lower income woman, has a baby. She may be forced to go back to work next week or in 2 weeks because she needs that job to provide the income for her family. Well, in my view, if a woman has a baby, if a kid gets sick and mom or dad has to stay home, we must have paid family and medical leave. And that is why Joe has proposed at least 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave for working families. I would go further, but that is a start. And brothers and sisters, when we talk about the children, and we don't talk about kids enough in this country, you know that? We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And I get a little bit tired of politicians in Washington, many of my colleagues in the Senate, they get up there in front of that American flag and they say, "We love America." Well, if you love America, you love the children of America. And if you love the children of America, you understand that when mom goes to work and when dad goes to work, those children and their parents deserve quality, affordable child care. And we all know that today, our current child care system is totally inadequate. Our children and their parents deserve better. And that is why Joe is supporting universal child care for all 3- and 4-year-olds in this country. And when we talk about our children and we talk about our young people, we are talking about the future of America. It is not too much to demand that we have the best educated workforce in the world. From child care through graduate school. It is not too much to say that every kid in this country who has the ability and the desire should be able to get a higher education regardless of his or her income. That is not a radical demand. And that is why Joe believes that we should make public colleges and universities and trade schools tuition-free for all working-class families in this country. And I have talked to so many young people and middle-aged people throughout this country who are talking about what this horrific and oppressive student debt has done to their lives. People are not getting married, that they can't buy a home, they can't have kids because of that student debt. And that is why Joe will make a substantial improvement in where we are today and cancel student debt for millions of young Americans. And when we talk about justice and when we talk about equality, Joe Biden understands that we must demand that the wealthiest people in this country, including billionaires like Donald Trump, start paying their fair share of taxes. It is beyond absurd that we have major corporations that make billions of dollars in profit each year that do not pay a nickel in federal income taxes. It is totally grotesque that working class people pay a higher effective tax rates than the wealthiest people in this country. So what Joe Biden understands and what you understand is the time is long overdue for the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes. Joe Biden understands that it is a little bit crazy that the United States of America is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Now, I happen to live in Burlington, Vermont, which is 50 miles away from the Canadian border. In Canada, every person can go to any doctor they want, go to any hospital you want. You're in the hospital for 2 months, serious procedure, and your bill is zero. Bill is zero. There's no such thing as medical bankruptcy in Canada because their healthcare system is publicly funded. And Canada is not unique. All over the world, democratic, industrialized countries have recognized that healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. And while Joe and I disagree on the path forward to universal health care, I believe in a Medicare for all single-payer program. Joe's health care program will expand health care to tens and tens of millions of Americans who don't have it, and will lower the outrageously high cost of health care in America. And I'll tell you what else Joe understands. He understands that it is so very wrong that in America we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. During my campaign for the presidency, I went over to Canada with a number of people who were diabetic, who utilized insulin. And we went 15 miles away from Detroit into Ontario, Canada. We were able to buy the same insulin product made by the same company for 1/10 of the price that it is sold here in the United States. And in my view, the time is long overdue to take on the greed, the corruption, and the price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. And we must not and will not continue to pay prices for prescription drugs that are higher than any other country on earth. So, brothers and sisters, here we are in a moment in history in which we face multiple crises. We have a pandemic, we have a severe economic downturn, we are facing the existential threat of climate change, we're dealing with systemic racism and a broken criminal justice system, we're dealing with an extremely unfair immigration system, we're dealing with massive levels of income and wealth inequality, a corrupt political system in which billionaires buy elections. And at the White House right now, we have the most corrupt president in the modern history of this country, concerned about his own wealth and his own power, and someone who has turned his back on the needs of ordinary Americans. So what we have to do in 11 days is evict Donald Trump. We have to elect Joe Biden. And the day after Joe becomes president, we have got to mobilize tens of millions of workers to stand up for economic justice, to stand up for social justice, to stand up for racial justice, to stand up for environmental justice, and to tell the ruling class that their day has come and gone, that we want a government that's going to work for all of us, not just a few. So let us go forward. Let us elect Joe, and let us begin the process of transforming this country and creating the nation we know we can become. Thank you all very much.